Hello, everybody. You're listening to Smoky Mountain Echo, Haywood County, North Carolina government's podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Huffman, and this month I'm excited to have Savannah Anders, and she is the executive director of the KARE House in Waynesville. KARE House is a vital organization that supports children who have faced abuse and neglect, and they work hard to prevent these issues through education and advocacy. Savannah's here to tell us about the great work that they do and how that folks can support their mission. So let's dive right in. Can you kind of start by giving us an overview of what KARE House is and its mission?
So KARE is Haywood County's Child Advocacy Center. We're located in Waynesville. We're dedicated to facilitating a community response to child abuse and neglect through outreach, advocacy, and specialized interventions. And that basically just means, that's very sophisticated language, but it basically just means we respond to child maltreatment and child abuse and neglect cases.
How did KARE come to be here in Haywood County?
So the community got tired of Haywood County being number one for child abuse and neglect. The CAC movement actually started back in the 1980s. And in 1991, KARE was established as a all volunteer-based program. And so Haywood County was number one for years and years for child abuse and neglect. And so community members came together and they were like, we're not going to be number one anymore. And so they established KARE as an all volunteer-based program through the school program.
So it's definitely a much needed program to be brought into Haywood County.
Absolutely.
So as a county and as a region here in North Carolina, we've just experienced Hurricane Helene. Can you talk a little bit about how KARE was impacted, or if it was, and then also talk about how you guys helped to work in the community to help others?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to talk a little bit first about how, we were able to respond to Helene.
Sure.
So obviously the biggest impact happened between Friday and Saturday. During this time period, obviously, the whole community was rocked. And so during this time period, one of the really cool things about child advocacy centers is we have a state network. And during this time period, we had other CACs basically reaching out to us and saying, hey, we know you guys are getting rocked. What can we do for you? And so I ended up actually at the center, at the new building, which is on Boyd Avenue. So our current center here on Main Street was not impacted besides losing power. But our new building was actually, we received 12 to 18 inches of water in the building and mud.
That's a lot.
Yes. I during this whole time, you're trying to figure out too, I actually live on the other end of the county. And so I'm trying to get here to see, was it 8 feet of water, 4 feet? Did we lose the building? And because it's located in Hazelwood, a lot of that area was directly impacted.
Especially that first night. There was a lot of, I remember,
Absolutely.
Road closures and everything right into downtown Hazelwood there.
Absolutely. And so we're right there on the river right there. And so I get there and the water was actually receding at that point. I get in the building and luckily the building is mostly block. And so there's only a portion that's sheetrock, but get in there up to mud in our ankles, water, you're worrying about, what the mold implications and everything like that is. So that was the direct hit that we took. I have staff too that was from Buncombe County to Jackson. And so water, access to water, all of that. So staff had, some impact there. As far as being able to move into the community, though, once I was able to determine, hey, this is the impact that's directly hit us. Our Jackson County counterpart, Awake in Jackson, that center director, the Buncombe County center director, Carla, with Mountain CAC, and the rest of the western counties were able to connect with the state chapter. And basically from Morganton this way, we had CACs down east shipping us supplies up here. And so we were able to actually, once we were able to clean up the building a little bit, the Jackson County CAC actually came over and helped us start delivering supplies. We recognized that there was people that were cleaning up their houses that weren't actually able to get to some of the distribution sites at that point, or that had lost their cars and everything in the flood, and so they just weren't able to get to distribution sites. So we actually were able to work with City Electric and some of the other CACs, and actually set up there at Boyd Avenue and go basically door to door. And that was one of the really good things that we were able to do to connect with that community down there, because a lot of people don't know what we do. All they see is KARE, Future Home of KARE Child Advocacy Center. I know not a lot of people are sure what we do. And so it was a good opportunity for us to get supplies out, make those connections, make some connections with some kids in the community and everything. And so that was really kind of how we were able to mobilize and help during that time period.
It was awesome to see, during the hurricane, we did have an abundance of supplies and a lot of stuff coming in, which just speaks to the generosity of people across the state, across the country. And then, to see our people here in Haywood County benefit from that.
Oh, my word. It was, it was a very humbling experience. I think to just watching the support systems and the ability for us to come together as a community after an event like this. And I mean, I tell people all the time, like, there's not another community like Haywood. The nonprofits work really well together in times of crisis. Like, we come together and we do what we need to do.
That's right. When do you expect to be able to move into your new building?
So the exciting news after all of this, so we're actually pulling permits, hopefully, and everything. Construction will start at the end of this month. And they told us 6 to 8 months, which is actually a pretty quick turnaround for, construction right now. We've worked with an architect. This has actually been something that I've envisioned for about 10 years.
Right.
And this has actually been a project that they've been talking about since about 2008.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we actually purchased the building in 23, and then now we're finally moving into that construction phase and able to be like, we're this close.
Yes.
We're super close.
Fingers crossed before the end of 25.
Yes. We're hoping July to September.
Okay. KARE House, plays a significant role in advocating, obviously, for victims of abuse and neglect, as you just said, for children who are victims. Can you maybe walk us through that process and kind of get into the details of how KARE supports these children and families?
So we receive referrals from law enforcement and or Department of Social Services, and we provide that coordinated and, more of a, I don't want to say compassionate, but just more of a home-like response. We're able to look at these as a team, and basically kids don't have to get interviewed at a law enforcement agency or at social services or somewhere where maybe an alleged offender is. We provide that home-like environment. We're currently in a house.
Maybe make them a little bit more comfortable.
Yes, absolutely. It also allows us to, so we are a separate nonprofit, and so it allows us to be kind of that neutral party. While we work a lot of times parallel with the system, it allows us to advocate, ideally at the end of the day, for what the child's best interest is.
So you just had your biggest fundraiser of the year a couple of months ago. I was able to attend this year. How did it go?
We were blessed. I'll just start there. Every year, KARE, we have a signature event. It's called Festival of Trees. A lot of the community members know it as the event with the trees. And so we have members come in, decorate those trees, and then we auction them off, and then we do a whole gala style event. This year we were on the back end of Hurricane Helene, which the month before kind of threw a little wrench into everything, but when you work in crisis work, you pivot and try to figure it out.
That's right.
So one of the really cool things we were able to do, we always try to be cognizant of the impact to the communities. And one of the new things that we started doing was allowing people from either out of county or out of state to sponsor baskets and businesses. We got in about $1,500 in donations to be able to go and purchase from Soul Sisters Depot or Frog Level Brewing, those businesses that were impacted. And so it was no cost to us, which allows us to raise the money off of it, but it also went back into our community. That was a new thing that we did this year that allowed us to kind of broaden our scope, but also give back a little bit to those businesses that had been impacted.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially much needed right after the hurricane.
Absolutely. And that, that's, again, one of the really cool things about, being able to do what we do as a nonprofit is to be able to turn and pivot. But this year was a new record set goal. We raised over $80,000. And for a small nonprofit as we are, that's typically not
That's
heard
awesome.
of.
Yeah.
We sold out within 2 weeks of the tickets becoming on sale. And even when we were, sponsors were gracious enough, sometimes didn't, give tickets back because they didn't have people to fill those seats, we were able to sell those tickets. It was definitely snug in there this year. But one of in my opinion, in the past 15 years, it's definitely been one of the best events that we've had. And I think this year too, just we're very grateful to Heart Theater for allowing us to, to continue to have our event there. It allowed us to provide the event and provide kick off the season, the holiday season, even after such a traumatic event that's happened to our community. It has allowed us to, have some cheer, had some holiday cheer, but it also to, I don't know if you noticed, but we had a Tuscola tree and a Pisgah tree
for sure.
right at the center of the thing. And so it, while that is a huge rivalry, it kind of, we specifically put those at the center of the thing to kind of be like, okay, the county's coming together to support kids. So we support kids across the county.
And kind of had an extra meaning this year, like you said, being right after the
Yes.
storm. Let's talk a little bit about your school safety program. It reaches elementary school students right here in Haywood County. What are some of the main goals of that program, and tell me how it's structured?
So KARE has 2 child safety programs. They are, the first one is actually our newest program. It is 3rd through 5th grade in all the elementary schools, and it is our cyber safety, internet safety school program. And then we also have our body safety program for kindergarten through 5th grade. The internet safety program basically just teaches internet safety, allows kids to have open dialogue about should I share this information? This is the information I shouldn't share. And it really allows them to kind of think through and come to their own conclusions, maybe this isn't safe. I know one of the big things that we also throw out is the FBI has seen a 300% increase in the past 2 years in internet related exploitation cases.
Oh, wow.
And so that's why too it's important for us to do this 3rd through 5th year after year, and it's a one session type situation on that. We try to do all the schools, all their programming in 1 week so that we're not taking a huge amount of time up and everything, and we work with the school counselors to schedule that. Body safety is typically in the fall or spring. We do basically safe touch, unsafe touch. We discuss a 3-part safety rule: say no, get away, tell a trusted adult. Our goal is to help kids understand there are trusted adults. Just like kids do fire drills, same concept.
Can you share any feedback or any changes that you've observed in the students as a result of this program?
We typically do see an increase in cases because it opens those dialogues and it allows kids to think okay, and it also helps kids to understand this, while it is not super common, it is more common than you think, and it may be going on. Yeah. Actually, or hey, my friend's going through this, or hey, so it allows them to, again, to come to those own conclusions. But one of the other things that we've seen is, especially with our 5th graders, some of these kids have never had this discussion, and or have questions that they might not feel comfortable asking their parents when it comes to internet related stuff, or hey, my sister hit me, is that considered,
right,
whatever. So it has allowed us to, have those discussions and or continue discussions that maybe parents have had, and or has allowed to open that dialogue where kids feel comfortable asking their parents, hey, we talked about this at class today. What does this look like for you? Or, hey, mom.
And it's great to be able to get the support for students who need it. Mm-hmm. So it's good that you've been able to partner with our schools. Oh yes, absolutely. And we were founded on the school program, and so the program changed a little bit. Obviously, we've updated a little bit. Yeah. Some of the 90s videos are pretty funny, but just need to be updated.
The old school media.
Yeah.
But again, it as we're seeing the reactive side of it in the services that we do, it's nice for us to be able to see the preventative side of it too, of hey, we can, if I'm giving this kid, this person, or allowing them to talk about, hey, this is your trusted adult, then they know who they can go to if the situation was to occur.
Talk me through some of the mental health support that children who have experienced, that you have for children who have experienced trauma.
Yeah, so mental health is one of our newer programs. It was established back in 2020. Our agency is no cost to the community. We're about a 95% grant funded agency.
Oh, yeah.
And so we noticed before this that continuity of services is not always fabulous. And especially in a more rural community, the amount of mental health providers that we have available, especially for kids who have been through situations like this, is next to none. And so we decided, hey, we'll start with one mental health clinician that we can refer in-house. We are a nationally accredited CAC, so there's certain standards that our mental health providers have to meet. And so basically when they come through forensic interview, child medical evaluation, at that point the advocate is also discussing with the parents and or the non-offending caregiver at that point, hey, this is an option, this is the availability, that sort of thing. And so they're able to even sometimes meet the clinician when they're not in session and, hey, here's this soft handoff. And then the child becomes familiar with the space and positive interactions and everything. So it's not a traumatic experience either. Our services too are very much led by the kid. If the kid doesn't want therapy, we're not going to fight with them force it on them. And so Ashley, who's my lead clinician, is trauma focused trained. She has several certifications that make her the perfect fit for this role. And then we recently brought on a second clinician back in 21. And she actually transitioned from an advocate to a clinician. And so we're able to meet additional needs as far as that's concerned. But even with two clinicians, we have 20 on our wait list.
Wow.
So
which just speaks to the need.
The need, absolutely.
Are there any misconceptions about child abuse and preventions that your trainings kind of work to address?
Absolutely. I think that a lot of times, and I think this is, just instilled from a young age, the stranger danger concept.
Yeah.
I run our numbers about every other month, and 80 to 90% of alleged offenders are somebody the kid knows.
Wow.
And that definitely doesn't mean that we don't need our kids to be aware of strangers, but it also, has really opened my eyes as a parent too of who am I letting my kid around? Who am I having these discussions with? Who am I setting boundaries with? And so, and I also think too, just specifically in this in what we do, it has allowed us to have hard conversations with community members and with trainings about hey, until we have this conversation, nothing's going to change.
Yeah. And I would imagine that's a really hard conversation.
Absolutely. And again, we see a lot of generational trauma. I hear the statement quite frequently oh, it happened to me and I turned out fine. And I think that while I'm understanding of that and empathize with that, I think that we can come together as a community and definitely, it doesn't have to always be that way.
Right.
I also think too that, I spend a lot of time with my community safety specialist and my assistant director who handles most of my community engagement stuff. And I think too, just the whole conversation around child abuse, especially when you start talking about child sexual abuse, it's a very taboo subject, and it makes people uncomfortable. And again, when you get into certain arenas, again, that whole concept of if we don't have a conversation or if we don't at least acknowledge the elephant in the room, then nothing's going to change.
Yeah. And it's ultimately about doing what's best for the kids.
Absolutely. And as adult, that's our responsibility. That's not on the kid.
Can you talk me through some of the agencies that you work with and some of your community partners and how you guys collaborate to achieve the goals that you have here?
Absolutely. So at the end of the day for us, like the kids, like our ultimate goal, like what's best for the kid. We work as a multidisciplinary team. So while the CAC or the Child Advocacy Center provides the forensic interview, the child medical evaluation, ultimately we can't do our job without law enforcement, child protective services, foster care, in-home, mental health, the DA's office. We work with juvenile justice. But the really cool thing about that is so we come together once a month and we discuss all the cases that are either physical abuse, sexual abuse, internet related, and any other cases that the team wants to discuss. And the really cool part about that is you have so many different levels and so many different areas of expertise. It allows us sometimes to formulate plans to support families that may not always be the traditional way or the way, the check boxes, the way the system sometimes works, if that makes sense. And so it allows us to also respond to these events as a team, so that one person doesn't have to carry the load by themselves. It also too allows us to be innovative and supportive in our approach, because obviously each kid is very different, and each family has its own unique circumstances. And so, not every child or family wants somebody to be put in jail and go through prosecution or go through the criminal justice system. And so it allows us to discuss, like, what does justice look like for this family? What is what is the family's, keeping them at the center, listening, the advocate bringing the family's feedback to the team and everything of, okay, maybe just mental health for this kid and getting this kid through mental health may be best case scenario rather than a trial or, jail, that sort of thing.
There's a lot of different facets to what you do here at KARE. How do you stay up to date on best practices and continue to grow as an organization?
We train. I think as an accredited child advocacy center, I've never worked in a field that has as much access and as much support from a state chapter, and or when we put the need out there or the request out there, partners show up, the state chapter shows up. We also have because we are a newer discipline compared to, say, law enforcement or child protective services, because it's such a newer discipline, they are doing so much research and so many different things. And I have a very diverse team when it comes to interest and stuff like that. And so, my interviewer may be interested in, advanced interviewing techniques or something like that, where my community safety specialist may be interested in, school stuff or, trauma-based stuff, that sort of thing. And so it allows us to, just because of also the different facets, to train in different disciplines and have different areas of expertise. And as far as making sure that we're staying up to date and stuff too, I think it's important too that we are connecting with people where they're at in the community. And so it kind of allows us to be engaged with, okay, boots on the ground, what's going on with schools, what are we hearing back from the students, that sort of thing. And then also a lot of times my role is to work with some of the community leaders, like, hey, this is what we're hearing, how can we navigate this? And so not only staying up to date here in the community, but nationally as well.
What are some of the challenges that you face when it comes to responding to child abuse and neglect?
Funding. I think funding is the biggest thing with any nonprofit. But I also think too, I think I said this earlier, child abuse is a very heavy topic. Yeah. It's taboo. You run into situations where you don't talk about things outside of the family, that generational stuff. And again, we're in a more rural community. And so I think the biggest thing with that is helping people understand it's okay to talk about this stuff, and that it is their business. Yeah. I think that's the other biggest thing is like people tell me, it's not my business. Actually, it is, because that one child could be going to school with your kid. It affects more than one person. I also think it's important to we have definitely increased our like community, like outward facing stuff, so that we're being more visible in the community and being able to help people also understand, like, while we deal with a lot of bad, there's a lot of really good things that we see too.
What are some of the achievements that you're most proud of?
Personally, like as the director, I have one of the best teams here right now that I've ever worked with. They're passionate, they're engaged, they're willing to have hard conversations across the table from people. And I think that's important as an advocacy agency. I also think too, again, with the building, they've been having this conversation since 2008, and we're so close to getting in there.
Almost there, yeah.
Almost there. And so I think those two things, and we have either sustained or grown every year.
What are some of your goals as we move forward into 25 and into the next couple of years?
So this year is getting in the building, and getting, being able to get immersed in that community over there and really just make some good connections. I definitely think diversifying our funding streams. One of the biggest impacts we're getting ready to take right now is because of the Victims of Crime Act cut that has been statewide, and then the Crime Victim Stabilization Act was not approved. God has been very good to our agency, and it has miraculously the past couple years has always worked out. Again, when there's a need, the community tends to step up. I'm hoping to, one of the biggest gaps that we've seen obviously is mental health. So I would really like to add a couple additional therapists to be able to, again, reduce that wait list down, and continue to give access to services free of charge. The other thing is parent education, parent engagement is a huge need in our community. We used to hold the Triple P Positive Parenting Program, and the state regionalized it, and other agencies have also picked it back up. I would like to see that come back. I would really like to see some sort of life skills program for middle school to high school students, how to write a check, how to put money in a bank account, how to change a tire, how to cook a healthy meal, some sort of curriculum for that, so that we're also giving them the tools to be successful in society.
How can folks, community members, get involved or support KARE House?
Donate. They can volunteer, and we're actually in process. We have a whole new volunteer set of volunteers that actually started with Festival of Trees.
Oh, awesome.
And we are getting ready to launch some new ones into our school program. Getting trained. We do a recognizing and responding training, which is basically just like everybody's a mandated reporter and going into the details of that. We also provide a 2.5-hour sexual abuse prevention training. It's called Stewards of Children, Darkness to Light. It's free to the community. We cover the cost of the booklets, which are about $12 a book right now. But we provide that free of charge, especially to youth serving communities. We also offer, policy support to, hey, this is where we see a gap. We've worked with First United Methodist here in Waynesville. We've worked with New Covenant, especially with their new preschool and everything. Yeah. And so we were starting to partner more and more, and get, having these conversations with some of our youth serving organizations here in Haywood. So
let's kind of end on, do you have a memorable moment kind of from your work here at KARE House? I know it's probably hard to bring it down to just one, but is there something that you can share with us, something that's really impacted you?
So prior to my directorship, I was a victim advocate and forensic interviewer here back in 2015. And there was a child who I didn't really understand the impact of what we do. And a lot of times it takes time to truly see, like, hey, this kid has taken their burden off, or they're sleeping now. Like, we don't, a lot of our work is gray. We don't often get to see the long-term implications and stuff like that. And so this particular child, after the interview, begged their mom to come back.
Oh, wow.
For therapy. And it took me a long time. Like, I didn't understand either. Like, you just told me all this traumatic stuff. Why do you want to come back? And a few years later, I found out that this child was a successful high school student, was a cheerleader, like all of these things that potentially could have been barriers if she had never been through here or had never talked to anybody about what happened. And the day I found out, like, that this person was, that I cried, because I was like, man, I gave that kid that space to share that information, to get this off their chest. A lot of times we see kids with depression or anxiety and everything, and then once they come and have these type conversations or tell somebody or tell a trusted adult, and then things start changing, you start seeing them smile and laugh and trust people. And like that, to me, if we can take that weight off of them, as adults, that means more to me. And if I can change that moment for one kid, then I've done my job.
That was Savannah Anders with the Haywood County KARE House. Their phone number is 828-456-8995, and they're located at 1159 North Main Street in Waynesville. If you want to donate, volunteer, if you want to speak to them about some of their services, please give them a call or go by and check them out. Whether you're a longtime resident, a newcomer, or just curious about the workings of local government, our podcast is one of your go-to sources for staying connected and informed. New episodes are available the last Tuesday of every month and always available on demand. You can check out our website, smokymountainecho.podbean.com. I'm Dylan Huffman, the Public Information Officer for Haywood County Government. We'll see you next month.